Disclaimer. We are interested in everything and experts in nothing. We enjoy learning, but get it wrong sometimes. We mean no disrespect, and if we mess up, kindly correct us. Let's take this ride together, unless your intention is to cause harm or distress, in which case, with utmost haste, fuck right off.
What we got?
So, my topic is banned books.
Oh!
Yes.
Was this inspired by your Levar Burton post?
It was inspired by my Levar Burton post, and I don't know if you saw this, but the Milford School District was trying to ban a book called In the Time of the Butterflies. And anytime...
Didn't you just read that?
I just finished it.
Okay, yeah.
And the reason I got it is because they were trying to ban this book. And so anytime I see a book on a banned list or like a contested list or whatever, I'm immediately like, I need to read that fucking book.
Yeah.
And so I did. And it was so stupid because the parents that were complaining admitted that they had not read the book.
Of course not. Of course not.
Of course not. Their complaint was... the book was pornographic. However, there's a passage where one of the young girls is binding her breasts because she wants to avoid unwanted attention from the ruthless dictator Rafael Trujillo.
Okay.
Because this takes place in the 1960s in the Dominican Republic, and he was a dictator. There was lots of corruption, and his regime was known for violence. So this is a fictionalized portrayal of the real-life Mirabal sisters. They were part of the resistance.
Okay.
And they were murdered by his regime, and that was kind of like the last straw. And everybody was like, oh, hell no. You done fucked up. These women were national heroes, and then they kind of got elevated to martyrdom. And then like a couple months later, Trujillo himself was executed.
Okay.
So she was referencing the binding of her breasts because one of the upperclassmen at the school she was at was basically turned into Trujillo's mistress.
Oh.
And so she was like, I don't want any attention from him. I'm going to make myself look as unappealing as possible.
Okay.
And that was their complaint about pornographic. And then later on, they talked about being married and having children. There's no graphic descriptions of anything.
Okay, so I'm going out on a limb here, and I don't know anything, but it seems less like it's a pornographic issue because I've read very explicit romance novels that nobody bitches about.
Right.
But it almost seems like ignorant transphobia. Like
it was.
Like it's really about the fact that they're binding breasts and they took it a trans place when it's not even about that either.
No, it's not. And then the 5 people that were complaining and saying that but like her Facebook post that started this mom that was bitching about it. Her Facebook post specifically said pornographic. They're teaching sex and this and that and the other thing. However, I will say they did not ban the book.
Good.
They did say, this is fine. You're idiots, especially if you haven't read it.
Yeah.
Because almost any book that you pull a passage out without any context could be really misconstrued.
Oh, God. Context is vital.
Yes. Yeah. So that inspired me because I was like, oh my God, I need to read this book. So I got the book and I listened to it and it was great. And of course it was a devastating story and it was beautiful. And I'm like, they're so dumb. Like this is a perfectly, and this is a 10th grade book. They were complaining about it at the 10th grade level. All right.
So it's not even like middle schoolers.
No. But then I also bought the complete graphic novel set of Mouse. Because remember reading about Tennessee School District banned Mouse?
No.
Which is a graphic novel written by the son of a concentration camp survivor. And he's basically telling his dad's story. It's called Mouse.
Okay.
M-A-U-S. And there are mice and there are cats. The cats are the Nazis. The mice are the Jewish people.
Right.
And so, of course, there's descriptions of violence because it's the
there would
Holocaust.
Be. Yeah, there would be.
And oppression. And this Tennessee school board, because they had a depiction of a nude lady
in the graphic novel.
Okay.
As she's being stripped down to go send to the gas chambers.
Which happened.
This is pornographic. Again. So this Tennessee school board really did ban mouse.
This hurts. Okay.
So I'm like all up in the whole, if you tell me this book is banned, I want to know why.
Yeah.
And then I'm also going to want to read it.
And now I want to read it for myself. Yep.
And like, seriously, the dude that wrote Mouse, like, it was sold out because a bunch of people in protest were buying it.
Yeah.
Because they were curious about it. Anyway, moving on.
So we're doing banned books.
So I'm doing banned books.
All right.
So it starts off with What Do the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, The Catcher in the Rye, Dear Martin, The Fault of Our Stars, The Great Gatsby, Mouse, Native Son, To Kill a Mockingbird, and the adventures of Captain Underpants have in common. At one time and another, someone has tried to ban them from classrooms and public or school libraries.
Okay. I've read several of those.
I know.
Oh my god, To Kill a Mockingbird is fucking beautiful.
It is.
I love that book. Okay.
So why do people ban books? Oftentimes, it's for religious or political reasons.
I was going to say because they're afraid of people
and also
thinking.
Yes. An idea, a scene, or a character in the book offends their religion, sense of morality, or political view. Some folks feel that they need to protect children from the cursing, morally offensive behavior, or racially insensitive language in a book. Or they think the book's content is too violent or too sexual.
Okay.
This is their reasoning. We know the real reasoning. But let's move on.
Let's move on from that.
The Civil War novel, The Red Badge of Courage, written by Stephen Crane, had been banned for its depictions of war. I read that in like the 4th grade.
I've never read that one.
It's intense, but it's about the Civil War, so things get fucking bloody.
Well, they would.
And they would. The teen bestseller Perks of Being a Wallflower, written by Stephen, I'm going to say his name wrong, Chbosky, has been banned for its description of sexual behavior and alcohol and drug use.
Because no teenager anywhere does that. Right.
Award-winning young adult novel Dear Martin, written by Nick Stone, was removed from the curriculum at a Missouri high school because it dealt with racial profiling by the police.
Because that also never happens.
Also in Missouri?
Ugh.
Yeah. So who's challenging these books? Usually parents, school board members, individuals, groups. Yet what's considered offensive may depend on the era or a specific community.
True, yeah.
Yes, these challenges pose a threat to the freedom of speech and choice. Freedoms that Americans hold dear and that are worth standing up for.
Yeah, agreed.
So here's a list of books that appear most often. This is not a comprehensive list of every banned book because we would be here for days.
Yeah, okay, let's see how many I've read.
But this is the most often banned and or challenged books throughout history.
Okay.
1984 by George Orwell.
You mean this one right here?
The one in your hand.
The one in my hand?
Yes.
I actually haven't read it yet, but it's one of those that people reference all the time, and sometimes I feel like they probably reference it incorrectly.
So you want to find out for yourself?
I want to find out for myself, yeah.
So this was originally published on June 8th, 1949.
Really?
Yes, it was.
I guess that makes sense.
Yes. Orwell's story of the all-seeing, all-knowing leader, Big Brother, becomes a universal symbol for intrusive government and oppressive bureaucracy.
Okay.
Orwell wrote this just after World War II as a warning to his readers. His goal was to be certain that the kind of future he wrote about in the novel should never come to pass.
Okay.
Even though the practices that led to such a state were abundantly present in Orwell's time. The official reasoning was it was accused of being pro-communism, and they had mentions of sexuality.
Okay.
So the main reason is because they considered it to be a pro-communism story.
Literally, I was thinking about this on my way to work the other day.
Uh-huh.
Why did we decide that communism was so evil? Like, what was so awful about the idea that everyone would be taken care of?
Because it came from Russia, and Russia was our enemies.
And now, I'm not going to argue whether or not it actually worked. Because I think we've established
paper?
so far it hasn't worked. And that's fine. But why did we decide
Because it was the Russians. Because Russia was the one doing the communism, and they were our enemies. Therefore, communists On paper, communism is not a bad idea.
Right.
Just like on paper, a lot of things are great ideas. But in practice, when you bring in real people...
Right. It gets complicated. It doesn't work. I understand all that. Right. But it just... Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking about that on my way to work the other day. But I'm like, when did we decide that people who wanted to make sure everyone was taken care of were somehow evil?
Obviously, pro-communism, back in the day, big hot button issue.
Yeah.
Anything that was considered communist was banned.
Yeah.
So that was the official reason.
Mm-hmm.
The next one I have is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain.
I think I've read that.
Yeah.
I think I read that in school.
This was originally published in 1884. And you might be surprised to hear this classic was banned almost immediately.
Really?
Yes. The story of a young boy who fakes his death to escape his abusive alcoholic father and his friendship with a runaway slave named Jim.
Oh, no. Why was it banned?
Oh, we're getting into it.
I'm cringing.
The two embark on a raft journey down the Mississippi River. So, why was this banned?
Mm-hmm.
The official reason was racism. Or basically, it was pointing out the absolute bullshit of it all.
Uh-huh.
But that was not the reason it was given. Originally, they said Huck Finn was a bad role model for kids. However, there are some pretty racist terms and language as well as negative portrayal of black people and women.
Well, that's almost unavoidable given that it came out of the 1880s.
Well, and Twain supporters contend that the author was being satirical. He was basically highlighting the absolute hypocrisy of the society that he grew up in.
Right.
And for one, Jim comes across as having more common sense and being more talented than either Huck or his best friend Tom Sawyer. And basically, Jim was the only one in that whole story that had any idea what the fuck was going on. Like, he was the only dude with common sense. Everyone else around him were objectively moronic.
Okay. But why does this feel so familiar? Because how many times do you see on TikTok or whatever where, like, a black creator will post about the things that a white woman does, like pit bulls, right?
Yes.
And they're like, "What are you doing?" Now I have pit bulls. I love pit bulls, but it's that whole, they still criticize the lack of common sense.
Yes,
and they have a point. I can't think of other examples,
they
but
absolutely do.
I feel like this still fucking happens.
Oh, it still does. Well, and the best part about this was Mark Twain actually stated he wrote Huckleberry Finn in response to the expose on the horrors of slavery that he wrote being completely censored. So before this, he wrote an expose about the horrors of slavery, and they highly, highly censored it.
So it probably absolutely was satirical.
Yeah, so as a big fuck you...
Yeah.
He was like, you want to censor my article? Fine, I'm going to blast you all in a seemingly innocent book that will be read for ages. Which I say to him, well played, sir.
I agree, well played.
Yes. So basically, if they hadn't have censored his article, we never would have had this book.
Interesting thought.
It is. The next one I have is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger.
I think I read that in high school.
Yeah. This was published originally July 16th, 1951.
Okay.
Now this one's a little weird as far as the logic behind the banning, because the message of the actual book seems to continuously be lost. And there are a lot of young men who seem to identify with the protagonist, who is Holden, except they miss the part where he stops being a bitter fuckwad loner and learns to appreciate and value other people. And so they kind of just stick with the angsty...
Yeah. Who was it that had a copy of this book in his pocket?
Okay, I got 3 names.
Tell me!
Okay, so who you're thinking of is Mark David Chapman, the man who killed John Lennon.
Yes! That is what I'm thinking of.
He was obsessed with this book. Also, John Hinckley, a man who attempted to assassinate Ronald Reagan.
Really?
Also had an obsession with this book. And then finally, Robert John Bartow. He killed an up-and-coming actress named Rebecca Schaefer in the late 80s?
Okay.
Early 80s? This was actually because of this case. There were a lot of anti-stalker laws that were put in place.
Good.
He was one of those obsessed fans. He got her address from the DMV.
This sounds very familiar.
Yes.
I think I've heard this, yeah.
He came to her house. She was very polite to him, but basically told him, thank you very much, I need to leave. And so, of course, he immediately took that as, she's a whore, I have to kill her.
Entitlement and purity
Yes.
purity culture at work. Okay.
Yes. So, these people were obsessing with this book, but they clearly missed the message that it was about. Is this the book's fault? Of course it's not.
No.
This is the fuckheads who took the wrong message and ran with it. But there's actually an article about the Catcher in the Rye murders. Because of how many people who have written manifestos, letters, or have said after they've been arrested their obsession and identity with this Holden Caulfield without moving on to the end of the book where dude grows the fuck up.
See, I wonder if it wasn't banned and if they actually sat and read it and had a fucking discussion, if it wouldn't be different.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But they were reading these books, and of course they read the whole book. They just skipped over the part where he stops being a bitter-ass fuckwad.
Yeah.
And they keep on the whole, oh yeah, he's a total loner, and he doesn't respect authority, and he doesn't associate with other adults, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, because he was a stupid fucking kid who was drinking to deal with some horrible things that were happening in his life. This was not a blueprint of how you should be.
Yeah.
The reason originally they banned it, they said it was for foul language, description of drug, and then, of course, he says some pretty racist shit, being a stupid fuckhead before he grows up and learns his lesson.
Yeah.
So those were the reasons it was banned, but then it also has that second, darker connotation where a lot of serial killers or people who have murdered people, they're not serial killers, they only did it once, have just an obsession with this book.
Wild. Okay.
Yes. So that's The Catcher in the Rye. The next I have is The Color Purple by Alice Walker.
Okay, I don't know if I read it, but I definitely watched the movie in L2, L3, Mr. Bronsel and Miss Ansel's class. Yeah.
So this was published in 1982. This book has been banned repeatedly because of explicit sex, rape, incest, sexism, violence towards women, and a lesbian relationship.
Really?
Yeah. The actual message is it's a documentation of the trauma and the eventual triumph of, I think it's Selly? Is it Selly?
Or Seeley or something like that, yeah.
I have not actually watched the book. Or I haven't watched the book. I haven't seen the movie. I haven't heard it pronounced.
Yeah.
So I've just read it in print.
Yeah, I think it was Whoopi Goldberg.
It was in the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
She is an African-American teen raised in rural isolation in Georgia, and despite the horrors happening to her, i.e. the incest and rape and sexual assault, she strives to project a positive outcome in life despite the harshest conditions. So, it's a triumphing story of look how god-awful my life is, but look how I choose to rise above it.
Yeah.
But they banned it because they're stupid.
Okay.
So the next we have is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Definitely read that in high school, junior year. I know I did.
Everybody did.
Yep.
This was published April 10th, 1925. Why was it banned? Besides being incredibly boring?
Yeah, I don't remember loving it.
It is such a boring book. Now, of course, this is my own personal opinion, as well as my son, because he had to read it as well. Actually, anyone else I know who had to read it in high school thinks it's an overrated fucking book.
Yeah.
But maybe it's your favorite book. I don't mean to shit on it. I just wasn't a fan.
Personal opinion.
The reason is because there's drug use, sex, and cursing, which honestly makes it sound way more interesting than it actually is.
Yeah, I feel like maybe this is a product of the era, because at this point, that's any sitcom.
I was gonna say,
TV.
that's anything on TV.
Like, who
that's
cares?
Netflix, like that shit's on the radio. Yeah, like no. The summary is the tragic story of Jay Gatsby, who's a self-made millionaire in his pursuit of Daisy Buchanan, a wealthy young woman who he loved in his youth. But it's really a bunch of vapid, useless rich kids.
Yeah.
I cannot stand that book.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot of it. I just remember not really caring.
The best thing I can say about this book is that it's short. Yeah. So that is the most positive thing I have, is it's not War and Peace long.
definitely have not read that.
I haven't either, but my mother has, which is not shocking.
Kudos.
Yeah, it's my mom, though.
I know, but still, props to her.
Yes. The next one is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou.
I have not read that one, but I want to before I die.
Yes. This was originally published in 1969. The book chronicles the author's life from age 3 to age 16.
Wow. Oh my God. Imagine banning someone's life. Like,
well,
for real?
She wrote poems based on her experiences. So
yeah.
They were like these autobiographical poems.
Oh, God.
It recounts unsettling and sometimes seriously traumatic childhood memories that was marred with rape and racism.
Yeah.
Anything that gives a stark, realistic portrayal of living through sexual assault, as well as being subjected to racism, makes the white man uncomfy. So that's why that got banned.
Yeah, I can't, I don't even have words for the feeling I have right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's something akin to anger, outrage, disbelief. But, like, yeah, the concept that these are her personal experience.
Yeah, she didn't make this up.
And you're banning her talking about her own personal experience. Like,
it's gonna get worse.
Oh, God. Okay. All right.
Case in point, in 1983, Alabama State Textbook Committee, they determined it incited bitterness and hatred towards white people. Yeah, your ignorance is shown.
Oh my God, but this is her life. She literally lived this.
And I'm like, Alabama State Textbook Committee has got some shit to say about racism. Really? Do you?
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
My words are failing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're just gonna move right on.
I guess.
Yes.
Yep.
Rest in peace, Maya Angelou. We love you, and fuck those people.
Now I'm gonna have to go buy that book today.
I know, right? Yeah.
Just today, I'm gonna buy it.
The next is The Lord of the Flies.
Have not read that one.
William Golding.
Have not read that one. Have heard of it.
A lot of people have had to read it in high school.
Have a general idea of what it's about. Can't say I'm super intrigued. Like, I feel like if I never read it, I'm okay.
Yeah. And actually, this book was published 9/17 of 1954, so September 17th. Technically, this book has never been officially banned.
Okay.
However, it has been challenged repeatedly.
Yeah, it's all the kids who go feral, right?
Yes, it's because of the graphic images of violence, racist, and explicit language. The story is a group of young boys finding themselves stranded on a deserted island and how they cope. The gist of the story boils down to toxic masculinity and in the innate savage nature of human beings. Golding was inspired to write this as an exploration of the idea of human evil, partially based on his experience with the real-life violence and brutality of World War II. So basically, as a species, we are garbage.
You know, I don't agree, but I totally see the argument. How about that? How about that?
That we are garbage, or that why it was challenged?
No, I don't agree that we are garbage, but I totally see the argument of why someone would believe it.
Well, it's just saying, like, in the terms of war and the things that happen.
Oh, no,
in that mentality, I can't even imagine.
I can't either. And if someone has gone to war and they come back believing that, I am not going to dispute that,
you
sir.
You have been through shit I have not.
Believe what you want to believe. I respect it. No argument from me.
Yeah. The next on the list is Of Mice and Men.
I know I've read that one. That's Lenny, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is written by John
That one made me
Steinbeck.
sad.
Yeah. It was written in 1937, or originally published in 1937.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I did the published dates and not the written dates, because who knows how long it took and
True.
how you find that information. The reason was vulgarity, racism, and treatment of women. That was their blanket reason. But also this came out in 1937, so vulgarity would be a deal breaker.
Yeah. It's funny. All I remember is Lenny, and is it a rabbit or a squirrel or something small?
Okay.
Something small. He was too rough on it.
It was a mouse.
Mouse. Okay.
It was a mouse. Yeah.
And then.
Hence the title.
Yeah, and then poor Lenny. Mm-hmm. And that's all I remember. All this other stuff, I mean, that you're so worried about, that's not what stuck.
Also, there's like a theory that it's seemingly promoting euthanasia, but I don't remember enough of the book to either confirm nor deny that.
Well, that's a whole other conversation anyway, that I'm not necessarily wholly against that either.
Right,
So that did.
In certain situations.
Yes, it's physician-assisted suicide.
Right.
Is what I'm
shouldn't
thinking.
be considered suicide. It should be end-of-life decisions.
There you go.
But anyway.
Yeah.
Obviously, the stories of its two title characters, George and Lenny, their ambition of owning their own ranch, and the obstacles that stand in the way. Those obstacles reveal the nature of dreams, dignity, loneliness, and sacrifice, ultimately displaying that not all things that appear good are good for society. It was the message of the book.
I could see that. I mean, I don't remember that much of the book, but the argument or that premise, I could see that premise being at least worth discussing.
Yeah. The next on the list is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey.
Have not read that one.
Yes, but I have seen bits of the movie. I haven't finished it. This was originally published February 1st, 1963. The reason they said it was banned was racism, misogyny, sexually explicit, and depictions of mental health.
Okay.
That's their reason for banning it. In Ohio in 1974, 5 residents sued the Board of Education, stating that the book was pornographic, glorifies criminal activity, could corrupt juveniles, contains a description of bestiality, I cannot confirm or deny, I have not read the book, violence, torture, dismemberment, death, and human elimination.
Wait. Human elimination as in they killed somebody, or as in they defecated?
Oh, they killed somebody.
Okay.
The elimination of the human species.
Okay.
I'm sure there's description of poo. I don't know.
I'm just curious. It's a mental institution.
Right,
it
but
could be poo.
This is such a way to guarantee that the kids are going to run and read it. You
Right.
say all of those things, gimme.
Yeah.
I need to read this book.
Yeah.
One of the main messages is the importance of freedom against oppression. The story takes place...
Oh, irony.
Right?
The irony, okay.
Yeah, the story takes place in a mental asylum in which repeated attempts to diagnose the patients as insane are conceived as a larger plot to produce pliant, docile subjects across America. So, those who are loud and against oppression are the ones being reconditioned. Yeah, I know.
Okay, but let's take it back a little bit, because when I did the Nellie Bly episode, they absolutely were
awful.
They were awful, and they were committing people for stupid things.
Somebody that was German that didn't speak English, that they didn't feel like hiring an interpreter.
Yeah, or somebody whose husband was just freaking done with them.
Right.
Like, yeah, so I don't think that's the biggest stretch.
Well, this came out in 1963. Now, they did still have people being committed for stupid bullshit, especially being gay, depending on where you lived and how rich your parents were. Nurse Ratched is
that's where she comes from. Nurse Ratched comes from... Okay, I've heard the term.
Everyone has heard the term Nurse Ratched.
Yeah.
And it usually is depicting a sadistic nurse or medical worker or whatever that is pleasuring in the pain they inflict on others.
Yeah.
She was created based upon an actual nurse that he apparently, Ken Kesey worked in mental health. And
really?
So he based this off of a woman that he encountered in this field. I don't know if it was as a patient or as a clinician. Now, it wasn't an exact, obviously he made her into more of a monster.
Sure, yeah.
But, yeah.
Imagine being the inspiration.
Therapy, even though she's probably against therapy.
Right.
But still. Obviously, this was made into a very famous movie with Jack Nicholson as the lead character. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, if you haven't read it or seen it, I won't talk about the ending.
Okay. No, I haven't.
No.
I've neither read it nor seen it.
Yeah. It's definitely the message of it at the end is to just basically have personal freedoms against oppression. And even though the way that it is achieved is extremely dark, it leads you through it as to yes, he would prefer XYZ over ABC. So... but that was another one. And then the final one I have. Okay. We've already mentioned it. Not Shocked. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This was originally published July 11th, 1960.
Wasn't it the only book she ever published?
No, not anymore.
Really?
Not
Okay.
anymore, because she actually just recently, within the last 5 years, published another book.
Okay.
But this had been the only book that she had ever. I don't know if it was the only book she ever wrote or the only book that she ever published, but it was a big deal because she was releasing another book after like 40 years, 60 years, some shit like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that book is called, and I should have looked it up.
Yeah, I remember there was a show we were watching about the guy Truman Capote.
Yes.
It was a show about Truman Capote.
Uh-huh.
And he was friends with Harper Lee.
Yes.
And for some reason, that's why I know that this was the only book she had written. But apparently that's outdated information now.
Yes. What else did she do? Because I know it was a big deal, because it was like, oh my god, she's releasing another one called Go Set a Watchman.
Oh.
I have no idea what it's about, and that's terrible because I should know, because, you know, obviously I loved To Kill a Mockingbird.
It was gorgeous. It was a beautiful book.
Story.
So, like, I have more books in my house than I could even... it's a whole thing.
It is.
And I have piles and piles set aside to read. My to-be-read list is
never ending.
Just the ones I own. Seriously, I have dozens of piles of books that I need to read. But my system is they wait for me to read them. And once I've read them, then I can decide whether it needs to stay or go. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, unless I'm going to read it again, or I think I might read it again, I get rid of it. Because my space is limited.
Yes, we have very
It's a commodity.
Space.
The piles are just, ridiculous. But To Kill a Mockingbird is one of only like 8 books on the top shelf of my bookshelf.
That will never leave.
Those are the ones, the top shelf of my bookshelf are the ones I've actually read and decided need to stay here.
Yes.
It's up there with The Giver.
Yes.
And The Martian, actually. Yes. I enjoyed that one.
I did too.
And then Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. Or it's a counselor wrote a book, and it was a really good one. Anyway, there's only a handful of books up there. Yeah. But To Kill a Mockingbird is one of them. Yes. It was so beautiful.
I looked it up, and she has 2 published books. One was To Kill a Mockingbird, which, as we mentioned, was originally published in 1960. The second is the Go Set a Watchman, which she released in 2015.
Okay.
So it was within the last...
Well, now, 7 years.
7 years, but... I thought it was sooner, but either way.
That's because time stopped in 2020.
Time stopped, yes. We're still on like 2020.2, literally.
Yes.
But anyway.
Yeah.
So obviously, offensive language, racism, the main criticism for the use of racist language, and the allegation of rape. So they're saying they can't talk about
that's
that.
Right.
Yeah. And so, of course, this is the story told through the perspective of Scout. She's a young girl who is the daughter of a lawyer who is defending a black resident who was falsely accused of raping a white woman. Mm-hmm. The story takes place in 1930s rural Alabama. You can see the problem already.
Yeah.
And it is loosely based on Lee's observation of her family, neighbors, and an event that occurred near her hometown when she was 10.
I was going to say, it's like the event really happened. I'm sure it was not isolated.
It was not the same event. It wasn't, I don't think it was specifically a black man who was falsely accused of raping a white woman, but it was something along those lines. Mm-hmm. And so that's what inspired her, is the reaction of her family, her neighbors, the people in the area. Their reaction to the event is what inspired her to write the story.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's the dumbest thing in the world to ban, because it is such an important book. It is such, like, I've read the book. Obviously. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've seen the movie, the black and white movie.
I think I've seen the black and white movie.
Yes.
I've definitely read the book. 100%
and one
remember.
Of the most poignant moments in both the book and the movie, but in the movie you actually see the little girl in like the innocence, you're not just reading it from her perspective, is when the townspeople are going to basically lynch.
Yes.
They're going to lynch
the
memorable prisoner, and Atticus Finch is standing outside and he's gonna get killed.
Yeah.
Straight up, that mob was fixing to kill him.
Yeah.
They would have killed him to get to the prisoner. And then she shows up, and with all of her little innocence, starts talking to them individually of like, hey, Mr. So-and-so, how's your this? How's your that? And kind of you can see and kind of get the feeling of that whole hatred mob mentality, like being replaced with being reminded that they're human, and this little baby girl is just talking to them like it ain't no thing, and they're just kind of like, we were about to straight up murder her dad in order to get our hands on this man that we know nothing about, but we've already decided is guilty.
I always kind of took it as they couldn't bring themselves to...
No, they couldn't.
To explain it to her or to tell her, or, you know,
because
they couldn't bring themselves.
They were basically faced with, like, she basically was a little innocent mirror up in their face.
Yep.
Look at yourself and now tell this little girl what you're doing here.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. And they couldn't tell that little girl.
They could not. They could not tell her what they were doing there. She kind of stopped them in their tracks, and then they all dispersed and went home. Mm-hmm. And she had no idea. You can see in the scene, I know obviously reading the book, you're reading it from her perspective.
Yeah.
But you can see she has no idea what was about to happen.
Yeah.
She has no idea how tense that situation was. And so it just, for me, that was like the most powerful.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's a horrible story. Yeah. It doesn't end well.
Yeah. Well,
unfortunately, it wasn't going to end well. It's 1930s Alabama.
I was gonna say that's realistic though.
It was insanely realistic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But like, imagine though. The thing that keeps coming up for me as we talk about all these books is these people who want to ban them have not read them.
They have not read them.
And I feel like they don't want to deal with the discomfort of reading them.
They don't want to deal with the discomfort because a lot of the reasons, like the number one reason on almost all of these books was racism. And I'm like, who's banning these books? White people. White people who don't want to admit that
they don't want to be confronted with it. They don't want to have to experience the discomfort of it. Yeah, but...
No, I'm not racist, so we shouldn't read a book about, you know, that time frame, because clearly that time frame was terrible. But it's like, if you don't... It's the whole thing of those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
Like, yes, this is horrific, but this is true. This fucking happened. We cannot allow this to happen again. Yeah. Take that uncomfortable feeling and hold on to it, because you need this uncomfortable feeling to prevent this happening again.
Well, and again, because they don't want to read it, they don't want to sit with it. What they really don't want to do is have that conversation with their kid.
No, because they'd rather really uncomfortable conversation.
Protect their kid from it, but actually, if you sit down and actually talk about it, you know, if you're really against what it brings up in the books, then have a conversation with your kid about it and why what is depicted is a problem.
Right.
Right? And that's way more effective than banning it.
Yeah, and all the time they're doing, like, you know, sexual content, blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, they're not teaching 50 Shades of Grey. I would have a problem because, first of all, it's a fucking awful book. It's not well written.
It's not well written, and it actually is... It is... That's a whole other thing. It's problematic, but at least it touches on consent and tries to explore consent.
I'm just saying it's
but there's
not
a lot
well
of problems
written.
wrong with it. Yeah.
I'm just saying also it's not well written.
No, obviously that too.
It's not a good book.
It's a guilty pleasure, though.
It's a guilty pleasure of, like, the really guilty kind, because if you want to read books like that, there are much better written versions.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the Twilight of porn. It's not well written.
No, it absolutely is. But it's like cotton candy.
It's cotton
right?
candy.
Nobody believes that it's
blah, blah, blah,
nobody believes that it's good or whatever, but it's enjoyable when you're in the mood for cotton candy.
There's a lot of sexually repressed white women who name their children Christian because they got knocked up after reading the book.
That's hilarious. Actually, I don't know. Anyway, we got way off topic there.
We did. But
that's okay. So I think that's the last one. That's what you got. All right.
Like I said, it was not an all-comprehensive list. There's obviously more books that have been banned, and they are newer books that discuss transgender identity, homosexuality, exploration of sexuality, and of course that's never going to be allowed. So the list of books from 2020, almost all of them have to do with either a transgender person, a homosexual person, anyone on the LGBTQ rainbow.
Yeah.
That they're not being villainized, because why the fuck would they be? But those are the ones for 2021.
I just realized this is going to air in Pride Month.
Oh, yay!
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
I'm gonna go to Pride this year. Okay, so if you enjoyed the podcast, leave us a like, share, subscribe on any platform. You can find us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Our Trivial Obsessions. We're on Twitter at Our Trivial Pod. We have a website, www.ourtrivialobsessions.com. That's where you'll find our episode references and bonus materials. And we have an email address. It is randomqueensobsess@gmail.com. Random.
Because we are.
Queens.
Because we are.
Obsess. Because we do. So email us there with any requests you have for a future topic or anything you want to add to the conversation. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. We will see you next week.
Bye!